Welcome back to the Brahmin Word, and we are getting to the point where the flood is finally done, and the water begins to go down or subside, eventually allowing for Noah and his family and the animals on the ark to leave. But what's interesting is how long it takes. There is a mass amount of patience that Noah and his family must have had with all these animals on the ark for how long they were on there. So we are going to look at that because, again, we typically think about the 40 days and nights of the flood, but we don't really think about how long they were on there in total. So, with that being said, turn to Genesis chapter 8. We are going to be looking at verses 1 through 19, 1 through 19. Uh, so, Genesis chapter 8, verse 1. But God remembered Noah and all the beasts and all the livestock that were with him in the ark. And God made a wind blow over the earth, and the waters subsided. So, here's the thing with this it doesn't mean like God is sitting up there in heaven and goes, "Oh my gosh, Noah." That is not what is meant by the word remembered. It's not like he's up there chilling and then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I forgot about Noah on the ark. I probably should go help him out. Not the case at all. Basically, what it is recalling is uh, especially with the fact that the waters prevailed with the flood for 150 days, which is the end of of chapter 7, verse 24, and the waters prevailed on the earth 150 days, and so it's a very long time that they are on this ark just for the prevailing of the flood for 150 days. That alone is a very long time. 150 days is give or take about 5 months. It is a very long time. But God not recalls, but he goes, you know what? It is time for Noah and his family and the animals to leave the ark. That's what's being talked about when it's saying God remembered Noah. It's not that he forgot about them or he or he just had a zoned out and then remembered them. No, it's just saying, look, it is time for them. It's time for the flood to end. It's time for them to come off the ark. And so God sends this wind, and because of this wind, the water subsides. But it takes a while to do that. And some other stuff happens too. Verse 2. The fountains of the deep and the windows of the heavens were closed. The rain from the heavens was restrained, and the waters receded from the earth continually. At the end of 150 days, the waters had abated, and in the seventh month, on the 17th day of the month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. And the waters continued to abate until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the first day of the month, the tops of the mountains were seen. So, you have a couple timestamps here, which we'll talk about. The other thing that I want to mention too, I did not mention last time about the flood itself, how all this water came about. I will leave that to next Tuesday. So we will take a brief break and talk about how the waters came about with the flood. There's some interesting theories there, so I wanted to walk through those with you, especially with this idea of the waters of the fountains of the deep. What does that mean exactly? Um, but however, the time has come for the flood to end, but it takes another 150 days. So there's 150 days where the flood prevails. Then there's 150 days where the waters abate, and that word abate just means a reduction of or a lessening of. And then you have a couple timestamps. Keep these in mind But remember in Genesis chapter 7, verse 11, in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, on the 17th day of the month, on that day all the fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were opened. So that's the beginning of the actual flood. So that's your first timestamp. Then you have these other timestamps as well. So we're still in that 600th year of Noah's life. And then you are mentioning the seventh month and the 17th day of that month, and then the 10th month in the first day of the 10th month. So you're having a couple of timestamps to help us realize how long Noah and his family and the animals on the ark were there. But then it keeps going. Verse 6. At the end of 40 days, Noah opened the window of the ark that he had made and sent forth a raven. It went to and fro until the waters were dried up from the earth. Uh, then he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters had subsided from the face of the ground. But the dove found no place to set her foot, and she returned him to the ark, for the waters were still on the face of the whole earth. So he put out his hand and took her and brought her into the ark with him. He waited another 7 days, and again he sent forth the dove out of the ark. And the dove came back to him in the evening, and behold, in her mouth was a freshly plucked olive leaf. So Noah knew that the waters had subsided from the earth. Then he waited another 7 days and sent forth the dove, and she did not return to him any more. So you have this I kind of see it as like a spy mission almost, where Noah is like, okay, it seems like things are turning in the right direction. I'm not hearing rain anymore. There's not these crazy waves anymore. Maybe it was very calm. The waters were very calm at that time. Maybe God told him that the waters were going down, but he sends out these birds to do kind of like a spy mission to see if it is okay to leave the ark. So he sends out the raven first. It does not work, and so even though that the mountains were visible, as we talked about with Mount Ararat in verse 4. Um, Even though those were visible, it's not okay yet to leave. Then he sends out the dove in verse 8, but it does not go well. She comes back to the ark in verse 9, but then he sends her out again, and there's some time in between, about a week in between. And this time she brings back this olive leaf. And especially with the olive leaf, we see this as a sign of peace. And I think it's interesting, especially with the dove as well. And I think the reason why is to go back to this point where you have all this chaos with the flood, and then you finally send out this little dove bird, and he brings back this olive leaf. And I think it's meant to show that there is finally peace after the flood. The time of the flood has ended. It is about time to leave. But Noah wants to wait just a little bit longer, and so in verse 12, he waits 7 more days or another week, and then he sends out the dove again, and this time she does not return. Why? Because it is perfectly safe to go out. She has found enough spaces to land. She's found a place to build a nest, whatever it might be, it is safe to leave. That is Noah's cue to leave the ark, and indeed he does. Verse 13. In the 601st year, in the first month, the first day of the month, the waters were dried from off the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the ark and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. In the second month, on the 27th day of the month, the earth had dried out. Then God said to Noah, Go out from the ark, you and your wife, and your sons' wives with you. Bring out with you every living thing that is with you of all flesh, birds and animals, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, that they may swarm on the earth, and be fruitful and multiply on the earth. So Noah went out, and his sons and his wife, and his sons' wives with him. Every beast, every creeping thing, and every bird, everything that moves on the earth went out by families from the ark. So you have this grand moment. And can you picture this if you were on the outside of the ark, which, well, according to the flood, you couldn't be because you would have been swept away. But if you were looking at the outside of the ark, and then all of a sudden, after so much time, the front door finally uh, falls down and opens, and then you have all these animals come out two by two. You have Noah and his family come out. Uh, it's kind of a funny, just clips that we see in movies where people are off the ground for so long, and then once they touch the ground for the first time, they some of them almost like kiss the ground because they're so happy to be on have their feet on the ground. For Noah, I'm not saying that he did that. I would be surprised if he did. So, but it's finally time to leave, and they leave. But it's interesting how long they were on the ark. So, you have that first timestamp in chapter 7, verse 11, which is talking about the 600th year of the life of Noah, sorry, the life of Noah, and it's in the second month on the 17th day. So now we're given two timestamps here, and it's interesting which one. Either one I could definitely see being the case. You could either go off the first one in verse 13, the 601st year, the first month, the first day of the month. The waters were dried up from off the earth. Noah removes the covering and sees that the face of the ground was dry. Could they have left at that point? Possibly. I'm not saying that's for sure, but it's possible that they could have left at that point. But then you're given the second timestamp in verse 14. In the second month, on the 27th day of the month, earth had dried out. And then you have God's declaration to Noah that they are to leave the ark and that they are to go out onto the earth and multiply the earth in verses 16 through 19. So, with that being said, for me, I think that the second timestamp is when Noah and his family and the animals left the ark. Um, so, with that in mind, if you look, that according to our 365-day calendar would be about 375 days that they were on this ark. I mean, it is a huge amount of time that they were on this ark. Uh, it is mind-boggling. So now, of course, if you say, okay, well, what if it's not the same exact calendar? Well, still, even the 150 days where the water prevails, and then you add that to the 150 days where the water abates at the end of verse 3, that alone is 300 days, just that by itself. And then you add the 40 days of the actual flood itself. So then that is about 340, and then you add these weeks with these birds. I mean, it is very, very close to about 375 days. So again, whether it's completely accurate to our calendar or whether it's a few days short, the idea again is that they were on here for around a year, and that is staggering. You just imagine the patience that Noah and his wife and his sons and their wives must have had for a year on this ark, not being able to leave that circumference or that square footage of the ark, even though it is a massive, massive boat. It must have been just completely just mind blowing, frustrating, trying, all of that stuff, and yet God sees him through it. And that is an absolute beautiful picture that I don't think we think very much about. We think about the flood itself, especially about the 40 days and 40 nights, but we never think about the fact that Noah and his family were on this ark for around a year, if not a little bit over a year. And that is staggering. But is a great reminder about the patience that the Lord gives us, of course, in those moments where it can be very, very trying. But then, too, just the grace that the Lord has to set aside this family. And yes, it may have taken a year for them to leave the ark, but the fact that they are even on there to begin with is a gift from the Lord, and and obviously that follows with a covenant between God and Noah, which is then. Uh, Wrapped up with the sign of the rainbow. So we will talk about that next Thursday. However, next week on Tuesday, I do want to talk a little bit about what it means and how the earth actually flooded with this global flood. So, with that being said, thanks for spending a little bit of time today with me with the Brahmin Word. I will see you next week. Thanks.